world where multinational corporations and totalitarian governments worked in collaboration with one another to maintain their grip over society. A world where everything is backwards. A world where the media spreads lies, education is indoctrination, and law enforcement protects criminals while punishing innocents. This isn't our world. This is the world of... Actually, that sounds a lot like our world. Have you given me the right script here? Oh. Okay. Dystopia. Imagine a world where all that shit I said earlier was true, except people had cool mechanical arms. This isn't our world. This is the world of Deus Ex, Human Revolution. Damn, I'm quite proud of that. It was like a movie trailer or something. Not bad. And hey, finally a game where I have an excuse to wear the shades of supremacy. What do you think, folks? You know, it's funny. My girlfriend says that I should stop wearing these shades because it hides my handsome features. She calls them the shades of shame. Shades of shame? I think she's got no taste. I call them the shades of supremacy. What do you think, folks? Shades of shame or shades of supremacy? What do you think? In fact, I don't know why I ask you people, because you're never going to side with me on anything, are you? So forget about it. Some people just have no taste. Deus Ex, Human Revolution. Where do I even begin with this one? I mean, wow. Just wow. Well, let's start with a brief history of the Deus Ex series for those unfamiliar. The original Deus Ex came out in the year 2000 and was almost universally adored. It's a sort of action RPG whereby the creators took almost every popular conspiracy from the late 90s and blended them together. A few years later, Deus Ex 2, titled Invisible War, came out, and, well, shit. It was fucking shit. In fact, it was so shit that the studio behind the Deus Ex series got shut down, leaving the Deus Ex IP in limbo. For years, the series was considered dead. That was until this game, Deus Ex 3: Human Revolution, was announced in 2010, a decade after the original was released. Usually when you've got a classic game that a lot of people like, and then a new studio tries many years later to make a new one, a prequel, sequel, or maybe even a remake, it comes under a lot of scrutiny, because you know it's under new management, it's under new hands, and naturally, fans' expectations weren't exactly high. And let's be real here, who can blame them? I mean, come on, reviving a dead franchise after a decade, a completely new studio working on the IP? I mean, look, I don't know about you, but if I was a betting man back then, I would have bet that this game would have been a piece of shit. Regardless, the game was eventually released in 2011, but was it as bad as people expected it to be? Well, let's find out. So what's it about then? The year is 2027, and you play as Adam Jensen, the head of security at Sarif Industries, a company that specialises in creating mechanical augmentations for humans. Basically, helping people become cyborgs. There's just one problem. Humanity is at odds over augmentation. Half of the population seem to support it, seeing it as the next step of our evolution, whereas others see it as unnatural and interfering with our biology. As a result, protests, riots, you name it, are rampant, and it's your job to make sure your people are safe. Of course, this is just scratching the surface of what the game is actually about, but as this is a story-driven game, I don't want to spoil anything. It's difficult to ascribe a category to this game. Is it an FPS? Is it an RPG? It's supposedly classified as an action RPG, but this doesn't really make sense considering all action can be avoided if you so desire, transforming it into a sort of stealth shooter. However, if you want to just go in guns blazing like I do, you can do. That's the joy of the Deus Ex series. You have a choice in how you deal with the situations you find yourself in. It's not a pure mindless shooter, but you also don't have to be in the shadows 24/7. In fact, a lot of the time, you can avoid combat altogether by simply talking your way out of situations. It is whatever you want it to be. The game gives you the freedom to make choices, and not only that, responds appropriately to your choices. If you piss someone off, it's almost guaranteed you'll pay for it later, but if you help someone out, they'll likely lend you a hand later. A good example of the game reacting to your choices is this. So I was just hanging around the Sarif HQ and I noticed these bathrooms, so I figured I'd go in and see if there's any secrets, as this game is full of hidden alternative paths and whatnot. So I accidentally go into the ladies' bathroom, only to run out in embarrassment. Later on, a guy who I work with commented this.
Oh, and by the way, Jensen, I know you've gone through a lot of physical changes of late, but you didn't become a woman. Stay out of the ladies' restroom.
The game watches you, it judges you, it knows. I feel it's best described as a sort of spy game or something like that. You spend the majority of the time in hostile places trying to infiltrate for information or to save someone or whatever. You always kind of feel a bit on edge. There are 3 different difficulties. I of course always played on the hardest difficulty, known as Give Me Deus Ex, which was just enough of a challenge to be somewhat difficult, believe me I died a lot, but not so arm-wrestlingly frustrating that you just want to give up. What I will say, however, is that if you decide to play on this difficulty, don't expect to be able to go around guns blazing with ease, as you die in about 2 seconds. This is easily nullified by being sneaky when necessary, and only letting out your inner marksman whenever cover is available so you can one-shot your enemies in the head. Enemy AI can sometimes feel a bit stupid, like if you shoot them they come towards you but never actually come over to exactly where you shot them, so you can just go back into cover and then a few seconds later it's like they don't know where you went. I understand the AI is like this to give players a chance to respond to enemy attacks, but their behaviour does feel a bit too predictable for my liking. There are of course numerous different weapons, from the pistol, the revolver, the combat rifle, shotgun, all the usual staples you've come to expect. I don't particularly have much to say about the weapons, honestly. They are not special, they aren't good, aren't bad, just get the job done. I don't like how in order to aim down sights the default key is the middle mouse button rather than the right click button. That's just bizarre to me. But hey, you can rebind, so who cares? Ammo is a delicacy. You're going to have to either spend all your credits buying it when in cities or loot every enemy, as otherwise you'll run out. The game primarily takes place in first person, but does switch to third person at times. Now usually I don't like it when games rotate from one perspective to another at a whim, as it's usually executed in a chaotic fashion. But this game's an exception. It allows you to enjoy the immersion and precision that a first-person perspective entails, while also making covering more fluid and showcasing some badass animations while in the third person. It switches to what makes the most sense, and I can't complain at that. Now, there's no levelling system in the game per se. Instead, when you get a certain amount of XP, you receive what's called a praxis point, and you can use these to get some augmentations. So for example, you can see through walls, increase how good you are with tech to break through doors, or turn turrets and robots against the enemy, increase accuracy with weapons, etc. One you will want to get early on prevents you from taking fall damage, and believe me, you'll need this, as falling down a laughable distance in this game will get you killed. Alright, let's see.
Jensen, it's me, Pritchard. Where are you?
What? What the fuck? Oh. It pretty much works like talent points do in World of Warcraft, which is quite ironic, considering the only praxis I was aware of before this game was a guild of morons. It's cool, you slowly feel yourself getting more powerful as the game goes on. Feels good. I really like the augment where you can read people's personalities better. People are split up into alpha, beta and omega personalities, and you can manipulate them with ease when you know who's what. There's also these amazing, I don't know what you'd call them, speech battles, whereby you can convince someone to make your life easier if you succeed, or make it more difficult if you fail. No joke, These were actually my favourite part of the game. Not enough games emphasise speech. It's all combat, combat, combat. Boring. More speech please, thank you. What? What are you looking at? Oh, here we go again. Shades of shame, shades of... You know what? It's shades of supremacy. I look good in these shades. What's wrong with the shades? They're too big. Get real. They're good. Oh, you know what? Forget about it. I'm out. Shades of shame. Get that now. Shades of shame. One of the things I noticed about this game was the voice acting. Oh my, it was absolutely fantastic. I don't know who the guys who did the voices in this game are, but they did an absolutely amazing job. I mean, there are some games where it really... It takes away from the immersion, right? Because the voice acting is so bad. The original Deus Ex actually had famously terrible voice acting. This is the complete opposite here. Human Revolution's voice acting is just absolutely spot on. Fantastic.
Wayne, it was a bad situation. You didn't do anything wrong.
Adam, Thanks. The door's unlocked. I'll tell the guys to let you through.
Well, make it snappy.
The game looks good for 2011 standards anyway, but it's a bit weird. It's kind of like the opposite of Morrowind in a way. You see, in Morrowind, the game typically looked like absolute shit, but the skies, for some reason, were really, really good looking, and it was a weird juxtaposition. This game's the opposite. The game looks good, but the skies are really... I mean, just take a look yourself. They just don't look good. And not only that, but this game, for some reason, heavily uses 2D assets, and I don't know why. I mean, for example, take a look at this level. Here I am just stood around and everything looks great, but then look at these trees. I mean, look at them. They're literally two-dimensional. Why? I mean, this game didn't come out in the 90s. I mean, this is billboarding in essence. Why is it in the game? I don't understand. The only thing I can think of was that this is a 360 and PS3 game, a very late one at that. Maybe it was this way to, I don't know, help with the frame rate or something, but why does it have to be this way on PC? It's very, very strange. You can tell that some assets are 2D, and 2D assets in a 90% 3D world, it doesn't look good. It looks wrong. And then you've got other situations like this, where here I am just standing on this hangar, or whatever you want to call it, and everything looks great, but then look to the side and what is this? What's going on here? It just looks like a big blurry mess. I refuse to believe that this is actually how the game is meant to look. It has to be a bug. It just looks awful. Really awful. Like, even in 2011, that would look awful. Now, it looks fucking rancid. Oh yeah, and don't even get me started with the pre-rendered cutscenes. This is Sudeki all over again. Game developers, please stop using pre-rendered cutscenes. They may look acceptable at launch, but years down the line when people are playing your game in resolutions that are 4 times what it originally was made for, they look like shit. In this game, they are always really dark and blurry looking. Makes my green screen look good. That's how bad it is. There is also... Oh, I'm sorry, did that scare you? No, your video player isn't bugging out. I was just simulating what it would be like if this video was like this game, as it has a massive stuttering problem. I know the game was originally designed to run on AMD cards, and I use Nvidia, sadly, but still, we shouldn't have this problem today. When the game is loading in stuff, rather than do so smoothly, it just stutters like this. It's like you have to do a 360 spin whenever you're in a new place just to be able to play the game smoothly. It's strange too, as otherwise, the game runs at a smooth 144 frames a second, just has difficulty loading stuff in. The game did also crash for me once, no error message or anything either, just closed for seemingly no reason. These technical problems aren't really that big of a deal, at least in my opinion. They didn't really get in the way of my experience, but for some of you it may. One complaint I have with this game is that it's not as conspiratorial as the original, if you want to put it that way. I mean, in the original game, right at the start, the game is bombarding you with fact after fact. I mean, it's just like a red pill cannon. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Number one, in 1945, corporations paid 50% federal taxes. Now they pay about 5%. Number two, in 1900, 90% of Americans were self-employed. Now it's about 2%.
But in this game, it's not as in your face. It's not as obvious. I mean, it kind of gives you hints, but you really have to read between the lines, if you know what I mean. It's not as blatant.
They're among us, you know, hidden in plain sight. And their masters mold the way we think. They spew their poison into your ears and you listen. You can no longer tell the difference between the truth and their lies.
See what I mean? I mean, it's kinda, but I prefer the in-your-face facts, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Number one.
Like, the game predicted the UK would leave the EU, but it doesn't, to my knowledge, tell you this up front. You have to have a keen eye. Later on in the game, there's this huge hall with a bunch of flags, one of them being the EU, and another being the UK. No other European country is present. I mean, I like the attention to detail, but who but a flag freak like me would seriously notice this? The game is also a bit unrealistic. Now, I know that's seemingly a stupid thing to say when we're talking about a game with cyborgs, but that's not what I mean. A fictional world still has to be somewhat cohesive and believable in order to truly be able to immerse yourself in it. And the game struggles in this regard. For example, at one point you go to China, and the signs are in both English and Mandarin, with English being first. This, unless in a complete tourist attraction, would never be the case. Also, this is apparently a Chinese policeman.
Enjoy your stay in Hangsha, sir. Just not too much. Good evening, sir. Is there anything I can help you with?
It's just not believable. That aside, the game's world feels huge. It's very vertical with many different floors rather than a vast open plain. It's very easy to get lost, let's just put it that way. It's not quite open world though, but it's not like campaign missions either. It's like a mix of the two. You can't just go anywhere you want, but you also have a degree of freedom. It's a strange mix of the two. You are always on the main quest, but as you travel you can also do some optional side quests that are always worth doing, and can actually somewhat affect the main quest, and are just as interesting regardless. I'm going to talk to you about something serious now, and this really was the main thing I took away from this game that sent a chill down my spine. Alright, so this game came out in 2011, but it's set in 2027. That means we're actually closer to when it was set than when it came out. But that's not the freaky part. The freaky part is that this is a fictional dystopia from the viewpoint of someone in 2011. But a lot about the world has changed since 2011. The average person today has degenerated in almost every way since then. What was classified as a dystopia then isn't so much of a dystopia today. Back in 2011, believing in the likes of a new world order was a conspiracy that only a complete nutjob would believe. Nowadays, you have to be a nutjob not to believe it. The more I look at this game, I realise that actually it might not be all too unrealistic after all, as it has a lot in common with our real world today. A lying media that's bought and paid for by corporations? Check. A world of shadowy, unaccountable elites with unbridled power? Check. A world of riots, mass urban poverty, and huge social division? Check. I mean, Christ, the only thing we don't have is the cool robot arms or advanced technology. Basically, we have all the bad shit, but none of the good shit. You know the world is fucked when a game that just a decade ago was meant to be an oppressive dystopia actually looks somewhat favourable to today. I mean, it really hit me when I saw this scene, whereby a corporate worker complained about not feeling safe about the riots going on outside, and the officer turned around and said, "Tough, it's their freedom of speech."
Protesting is not against the law.
I know that, officer. But some of those guys were carrying tire irons and setting garbage cans on fire.
And those were the ones we arrested. The rest were merely exercising their right to free speech.
That would never happen today. How is it that the people of Deus fucking Ex have more freedom and rights than people in reality today? Oh, Jesus Christ. As this is a Deus Ex game, it of course features numerous different endings. Which one you get depends on the choices you make. Now of course I'm not going to spoil them for you here, as that would kind of destroy the entire point of playing. However, what I will say is that each ending is satisfying, but in a different way. It's kind of like Fallout New Vegas if you've played that, whereby there isn't an outright good or bad ending, but different shades of grey. Some things are good, some things are bad. After completing the game, you will no doubt, just like myself, go and look at the other endings to see if you made the right call, only to end up being more uncertain than you were before. Which, by the way, is a sign of excellent storytelling. Good writing doesn't just answer the questions of which it has posed, but inspires the reader to ask completely new ones. After you complete the game, you unlock New Game Plus, which is where you can play through the entire game again, but keep your augments from before. Why the hell you'd want to do this, I don't know. The last thing I want to do after completing a game is to do it all again. I mean, I don't mind it being there for those who want it, but it's not for me. However, the developers also added in 8 hours worth of developer commentary, meaning that when you play through the game, you can actually hear the developers speak their thoughts about the game's design.
Well, when we started this project, we were kind of like, it was important to us to have links to the X1, but we wanted it to be subtle. We didn't want it to be totally in your face, even though the first character you see is Bob Page.
but you're not supposed to know that.
We wanted it to be subtle, so the first thing we did was to do just that.
Why do more games not do this? It's absolutely fantastic and actually gives you a reason to play through again.
And so I came in on a Saturday and started with Sarif HQ, and I basically worked 20 hours over the weekend, 10 hours straight on Saturday, 10 hours straight on Sunday, no lunch, nothing, to try and do this.
Top notch. Overall, Deus Ex Human Revolution is an absolutely fantastic game. I mean, I feel gutted that I've only just got around to playing it now. Me, in 2011, I would have been all over this. It's fantastic. It really is. Honestly, this is one thing I never understand about the Deus Ex series in general. It's very underrated. You know, you hear about it like here and now in little whispers, but it's not as big as it should be. I had a lot of fun with this game. I completed it in about, I think it was just over 23 hours, something like that. And that was, of course, the main quest and all of the side quests. I had an absolutely fantastic time with it. Every second was just joy. Well, apart from the fucking elevator rides, they weren't a joy. But apart from that, it was fantastic. The game came out a decade ago now, so it's quite cheap at $12.99. However, the Deus Ex games are almost always on discount. I got this gifted to me when it was on sale for $1.99. $1.99! That's less than a Big Mac, for Christ's sake. And this game is worth well more than a Big Mac, let me tell you. A 20 chicken McNugget share box, at least. By the way, speaking of McNuggets, did you know that they contain an ingredient called potassium chloride, which is frequently used in the lethal injections given to prisoners on death row in the United States? No? Well, I just thought I'd let you know. Anyway, if you managed to pick this game up for a price like I did, I mean, you've basically robbed the developers. I mean, it's just unbelievable value for money. I mean, what have you got to lose? A Big Mac? Also, if you're worried about not having played the first 2 games, first, you shouldn't. This game is a prequel, so playing any of the others aren't required by any means. If you see this game on sale, my advice is to just go for it, instantly. This isn't a game that can truly be understood by just watching someone else play it. Deus Ex Human Revolution is a feeling, like all Deus Ex games. A feeling you can only truly understand by playing it yourself.